I thought money was going to make me happy. It didn't make me happy at all. I had friends that were like driving Mercedes, and I was looking at my life and I'd be like, with everything I have, is that it for me? I was doing like mild fraud here and there.
You were?
Yeah.
How did you get into that?
Once it first works out, then you're just like, wow, like I could do this. So it's not going to be a couple hundred now. It's going to be a couple thousand.
What stops you? What causes a shift?
I thought money was going to make me happy. It didn't make me happy at all. I'm not even the person that I thought I was. I wanted to be the change that I wanted to see. And working with the youth, I could see when someone believes in them, how much they would push themselves further.
All of these huge, difficult milestones in life can also propel you towards having such greatness once you actually overcome them or master them in some way. Welcome back to another episode of Who Judges the Judge, the podcast. Today I have special guest. This is Deluxson Yogarajah. He is a psychotherapy student, a youth violence prevention worker, and a formerly accused and in fact convicted fraudster who took himself out of the system and is doing some really phenomenal, incredible work to help give back to the community and help youth make better choices. That all fair?
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Deluxe.
Thank you for having me. Hi,
Thank
Jordano.
Thank you. It's been a long time. We met, how many years ago now?
Ironically, I think it was when I was like 21. So like maybe 2015.
Okay. And at that time, you were taking an LSAT prep course.
Yes.
So you were on your way to write the LSATs in order to possibly prepare you for law school.
Yep.
And I came in as a guest speaker.
Yes, you did.
Just to talk about, my history and my background in hopes that other individuals who may have backgrounds either similar or who otherwise feel like their history would prevent them from being a lawyer might actually understand that that's not true. And I remember it resonated with you. I remember us like just chatting and you gave me little pebbles of your story, but never in a full picture. And so I think you're here today to talk about that full picture.
Absolutely.
In an honest and open way for the first time.
Yeah, this is the first time. I think I was saving it for something along that kind of resonates with how I want to tell my story. And I think that when I met you that first time it was a great experience because I never saw a criminal lawyer kind of like live something that like I lived when I was younger at the time. I think when I was going through that course, I was actually going through trials and other things. So when you were talking about your story and how you went through the justice system and even how you eventually went to Osgood, I was just like, I was thrown back because I met lawyers and corporate lawyers. And the biggest thing, they're like, oh, if you apply yourself and work. And I was like, I kind of know that, but they never really spoke with something that really resonated with my story. I grew up in Jane and Finch, so we don't have lawyers that come from the community or stay in the community after the fact. I wanted to change that narrative for like the community, but for myself.
It's amazing. And you're making those changes now.
Absolutely.
But let's go back to the very beginning. So were you born living in Jane and Finch?
Yeah.
That the community you grew up in?
Yes.
And talk to us about like your family a little bit. Mom, dad, did you have siblings growing up? What was life like for, let's say, your first like 12 years before you're even old enough to get arrested?
I think growing up in Jane and Finch, I don't think anyone really knows that they're like kind of marginalized in those eras. I know that not a lot of people have money. And I think that's the base of what everything was. My mother raised 3 sons. I'm her eldest son. And then my father was in the picture, but at the same time, he was going through his own trials and tribulations as well. So he wasn't as active as a father as I would have liked. But the one thing is that he did provide an environment for us to kind of live. In that sense, I think one of the things that I learned growing up was I had to forgive my father for not loving me the way that I needed when I was younger. And there was a period of my life that I resented him, and I didn't see why he wasn't showing up as a father as I'd liked. And when you're dealing with any parent and stuff that are going through substance abuse and stuff like that, you gotta love them. And then eventually, if you can't love them, you start hating them. And I hated him for a while, but I think when I was studying psychotherapy and going through therapy myself, there was a moment where I hadn't talked to him for like 3 years, and there was a class on forgiveness, and that was a moment where I was like, okay, I'm going to take this opportunity to reach out to him and actually say, I'm sorry for the hurt that I've done to you also. And that was the first time, we cried, and I hugged him for the first time. We never like were huggy or something. And that took me back because then I started...
And you were like mid-20s at that point?
Mid-20s at the time, yeah. So when I was going through a lot of like the things with the justice system, I realized it was tilting me emotionally. But growing up in Jane and Finch, that kind of was like baseline. So like it was always aggressive. You always had to like show people that you weren't scared to like react and stuff like that, or you'd be a victim. I honestly and truly, growing up in Jane and Finch during like the early 2000s, it wasn't an easy path for you, especially when you went to a high school with like gang violence and neighboring gangs all in one school. Like it was a fight every day. So you kind of get desensitized to violence.
And now I have so many questions.
Yeah.
Did you know growing up that your dad was struggling with substance abuse issues? Like 8, 9, 10 years old, you are at an age, obviously, like as a young boy, you need a man to help teach you and guide you and be there for you. And you're the oldest of 3 boys. So, but did you recognize that sort of that's why he either wasn't there or some of his behavioral issues was tied to substance abuse, or you just knew that to be your dad?
I knew that there was something wrong. I knew that it was like a lot of like the alcohol, kind of using that as kind of a retreat a little bit.
Okay.
But mental health wasn't something that we were talked about. I think it was loosely introduced to me in grade 11, but I was just like, yeah, mental health. Like I didn't take it as seriously as it is now, but I didn't even know how to help him, even if I could. I think the most that I've seen with others and myself, you try to reason with them. You try to be like, hey, can you stop? And then they don't. So it's just like, I can't stop.
Right. And were you having those conversations with your dad when you were a child growing up? Like, you got to stop
I grew up
this?
very young. I feel like I started, owning up and realizing I was able to step in around 12.
Okay.
And I think that's why a lot of the times I had issues kind of like expressing myself, was because I had to grow up young. I had to stay at home and support my mother and support her while she was dealing with this at time. So I wouldn't always be outside with my friends. I think I would have moments where I would. But at the same time, I had to deal with a lot of trauma of that growing up and seeing that violence at home. And one of the things that I try to do now is kind of like, I could recognize it now. And to recognize violence is that you have to be in violence.
Right.
So seeing that and kind of helping and supporting other youth are in that, it's really hard because nowadays the economy is not the state where you can move out and support yourself. So it's even tough. Like one of the things I had to do for myself is you had to endure. Like, there's no way around it. It's easy to say, oh, why don't you just leave? Why don't you just go somewhere else? It's like,
you're 10, 11, 12 years old.
Where are you going?
There's not really that option. And when you talk about the violence, was this, violence against your mom?
Mm-hmm.
And so you grew up in a home with domestic violence present.
For years, yeah.
It's a piece that rarely gets talked about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we look at the victim of domestic violence is generally the woman who's being beaten, but the kids that are also seeing this and helplessly watching as a parent is enduring domestic violence is equally traumatizing on the psyche. And so was anyone there to help you or talk you through it? Like even your mom, who obviously was limited by her own trauma that she was having to endure?
It's one of those things that's hard to talk about with people. Like,
right.
And at the time, we didn't have mental health resources. I didn't even know what therapy was. Until when I started going into the justice system, it was recommended that I go to therapy. And I was like, what is therapy? And it woke me up when my lawyer's like, oh, this is how much it costs. I was like, oh my God. Like, I think at the time I was going to York University, I'm like, I think that they might actually have a service over there. And that was my first encounter with therapy. And at the time I was like, I didn't know that you could talk about these things with someone that wasn't going to judge you and stuff like that. But at the time when I was younger, I couldn't talk to anybody about this because I felt embarrassed about it. I felt shame. And I didn't know how another person would react to it, or like how they would either contribute or make it worse. And so I was talking myself through it. And I think that after you try
at like 11 or 12?
Yeah, I was talking myself through it.
Wow.
And I think that's why I did so well in school, because school is my outlet. Like I played sports, I did all these other things, I was social, but school is my way of kind of expressing myself. So even though it was so loud at home, I would do my homework and other things. I would do like the homework for the last couple of days, so I'd be done in like the first 2 days, and I'd have anything else to do for myself. But that's what happened when you like trauma ages you. And I realized I was thinking very like advanced at a young age, but I wasn't given opportunities to be in gifted classes. I wasn't given these opportunities, so I kind of resented it a little bit too. I was like, and then my marks dwindled because I stopped caring. I was like, oh, if I'm never gonna get into these classes because they're labeling me as like a problem in the classroom or stuff like that, I was gonna be that problem. I was a class clown. I love making jokes and stuff like that, but I always got the work done. But they just never saw me past as like a class clown. I think they never saw me as an academic.
Do you think that was a way for you to just get the attention that you weren't getting at home, was to act out at school?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was like, it was mild because I didn't want to get too like much attention at school, in the sense that like they'll call my parents and stuff. I was like, oh my God, like I'm already dealing with enough, coming
Right.
back and dealing with that. And it's like, my mom had 2 other sons too. So I had to kind of like keep it mild in a sense where like it's noticeable, but not too much where they call my parents and be like, yeah, he's like he's a character here.
Fair. Now, you spoke a little bit about witnessing, gang violence and sort of gang activity within your community. Was that something that you were attracted to? Was that the type of behavior that drew you into the criminal justice system?
Yeah, I think when you grow up in Jane and Finch, like you're around different people at the same time. So,
Right.
but it was like a strong tense in Jane and Finch. Like it was very like it could be 100 in like 10 seconds kind of thing. So just like who you associated with and everything. Like for me, I was always like a calm person. So I was always fine with everyone in my school, and I played sports. I was good academically, but I wasn't one of those like academics that kept it to myself. I was really like helping other people at the same time. Like if it was a test or anything like that, I'd give my answers away. It was one of those things. I was never like, oh, just like hide my answers kind of guy. Like I was more like, if I could support you and I could help you to be better, then I would. It doesn't cost me anything. So that was my way of like also networking at the same time before I even knew about it, because I was like, oh, you want to pass this course? I could pass this course, no problem. Like, let's say, and then we worked together. It was just that easy. And that's how I was building up my name in the school. That's why after school, like when high school was done, I always tell the youth that I work with, high school's a bubble. Doesn't matter like what you do in it. It's like life really starts after the fact. And that's when you see like a lot of like, there was so much trauma in Jane and Finch where like the people that you went to school with, like they passed away in the most traumatic way possible. And everyone knows how that happened, the details. And that's what happens when people don't report it to the police and stuff like that, because they don't want to get involved, rightfully so. Like, why would I want to get involved in this? So people know the ins and outs, but that was the problem with gang violence. It's not what it seems like. I studied it in criminology, so I didn't really get into that lifestyle, but that was a money making factor that was really attractive to me, and I think I never dipped into it until after the fact.
After what fact?
When I started working at like Hudson's Bay at the time, and there was
later into your teens.
Yeah.
So like, let's say 12 to 15 years
Yeah.
old. So just as you're like on the cusp of ending grade school,
Mhm.
going into high school.
Yeah.
What does like lifestyle look like? Like, are you involved in criminal activity? Do you get involved in some of the gang activities? Because I have clients that start at like 11, 12, 13 years
Mhm.
old. And oftentimes they're living in a situation where they want to financially contribute to the household. Mom can't pay the bills. They're really
Yeah.
hungry. And they just start running drugs in order to help pay for
Mhm.
life. Is that your experience, or you're just seeing that within your community?
I think I was seeing it, but I try my best to stay away from it. I think growing up, I didn't want to cause that stress on my mother. So what I would do is I would endure with my mother together. So like if she was going through a traumatic moment, I would try to like talk to her and try to work with her that way, because I think the money was already happening in different ways, but
Okay.
I wasn't contributing to it.
Got it.
So it was more or less like I was being a support system for my mother, because I think the family relied on my mother. So if my mother wasn't in the household or wasn't like the best thing, that would look bad on us. So I would sacrifice in a different way.
Now, if you wanted to become involved in, gang activity, drugs, violence,
Mhm.
the things that you were seeing around you,
Yeah.
how easy would it be for you to connect to that world coming up in Jane and Finch, especially coming from a household
Mhm.
where there's already substance abuse and violence?
Mhm. I think it would be so easy. I think it's just like walking to the store. It's like, how can I get started? Like give a job application, even less than that even. And I think that's the trick to it. It's like it's so easy to get in, but harder to get out.
Right. And so that's a piece that like a lot of people who don't grow up in these communities don't understand.
Yeah.
So I often find myself, at a dinner party somewhere and, oh, what's with all these kids and the way that they're behaving? I get those
Yeah.
questions constantly. I can explain it to a certain extent, but as someone who grew up in the middle of that community and also is currently helping
Yeah.
to try to pull kids out of violent situations.
Mhm.
Can you speak a little bit about what it means to like become involved in gang activity and some of the gun violence that we're seeing,
Mhm.
running rampant in communities across this country?
I think the biggest one was, I think there was a concept with grooming, for example. It's like when older guys are working with like younger guys because they know that they would do less time. And I think that was a phenomenon at a time, like where you would see like kids as young as like 15 or something doing shootings and everything. And I think that the laws have kind of changed around that. I'm not 100% sure, but there was a decrease in that because I think that there was a lot of guidance towards the younger guys to be like, well, this murder that you're going to do for 25 years is probably going to be cut down to like 13 or something like that. Is that still worth it at the same time? And that was one of the things that we're trying to say, like the people that in those lives and stuff like that, they have everything to gain from it. So if you're going to be the conduit for this, and it happens like the rap scene and everything along those lines, someone suffers at the end of it. Like people don't know when you go to jail and they think it's easy. I think the misconception is that, oh, if I give a lawyer $100,000, like I'm going to beat my case.
Right.
It's never the case because there's always circumstantial factors, your past and everything. Your mitigating factors are the rates of you doing it again. It's like there's all factors that money can't solve. So just because you get a top lawyer doesn't mean that everything's going to be great. I think that people don't know that you still have to spend years in jail for this.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes. And sometimes you're right. It doesn't matter how much you spend, especially with the amount of CCTV footage right now that's currently capturing most of our activities as we move about this city. And a lot of people don't realize that. And then the use of our own phones.
Yeah.
You know, the number of cases right now that are driven by an accused person's own phone use are astronomical. Are these the types of things that you're teaching to the youth that you're working with?
Absolutely. I think it's a way for them to be knowledgeable. I think because they see it as more of like, oh, I'm a get into the criminal behavior just to get things I never had. But okay, you get everything you have ever wanted. Does that ever stop? And that was my issue, is that I had everything I never had as a kid. And I was getting more reckless. I was getting more dangerous with it. I was getting more risky with my behavior. So if I did something for $1,000, the next one is $3,000. And it's like every time you're risking it, you don't know that the investigation is building up on you and that there is a paper trail of this fact. And a lot of people aren't built for the justice system to go through trial, to even pay for a lawyer and find these things. It's a lot. If you're already dealing with a lot already, going through the justice system is not a rewarding system. You can't get a job after the fact if you have a criminal record. Nowadays, you can't even get a job, but adding a criminal record, I couldn't even get a job, and I was doing pretty well for myself academically and other things. And that woke me up. I was just like, I found a different hustle. And I was building partnerships, building relationships. That's what really and truly changed my life. And I started giving back to the community that I was raised in. And it was pouring back to me in different ways.
So let's break that down a little bit. So 15, 16, you're in high school now. Are you involved in criminal activity?
I knew people that were involved.
But you were not?
No.
You were sort of staying out of that?
Yeah, staying out of it.
Doing really well in school?
Yeah.
Other than being a class clown. But you're still doing really well in school academically.
Yes.
You're always smart.
Mm-hmm.
Still playing sports?
Yep.
Looking after your younger siblings?
Mm-hmm.
Looking after your mom?
Yep.
And is your dad still like active in addiction?
Yes, every day.
Okay. Is your mom and dad still together?
To a degree, yes.
To a degree.
Yeah.
Okay. And is your dad sober now or no?
No.
He's still struggling.
Still struggling.
Wow.
The biggest thing changed was the way we responded to it.
And when you say we, you and your mom and your siblings?
Yeah.
So the way the whole family.
Yeah. We just had to adjust, because I think when you're younger, you just you try to help them and then they disappoint you. But if I know someone's going to disappoint me, I'm not going to be mad at it. If anything, I'm going to accept that, who they are as a person.
So interesting. So you start therapy before everyone else, and then I'm sure come and teach the lessons to your family.
Absolutely.
So really breaking that generational trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a huge piece, like to have one person just start that chain reaction of breaking those traumatic responses. Sometimes that's all it takes.
And it's the hardest, because you have to really and truly believe that it's going to work. If you and you have to seek the help. I think the vulnerability of you know what, everything's not all right.
Wow.
That really shifted how because I never really asked for help. I never was to go to someone and be like, you know what, this is what I need for myself. I was more of an endurance. Oh, it's I'll figure out a way for myself, but I was burning myself out.
And you're still in high school when you start burning yourself out.
Yeah.
So you finish high school, still not involved in criminal activity. No. You've managed to stay away from everything that's going on around you. And is that, again, that's just to make your mom, you know, I guess proud to some degree, and to not provide another source of stress for your mom.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure if you're out there running around, you know, causing trouble, it's even more on your mom's shoulders than what she already has.
I know that she had an image of me. And I think when I started getting involved, I know there was a point where she found out, and I seen her feel so she didn't talk to me for a couple of days, and that kind of hurt me because I think she saw like two realities of me, and the one that I would like come home to wasn't the one that she saw on a piece of paper with my charges. Like, what the hell?
Wow. So when do you start getting involved in criminal activity?
I think there was points where like I had modes where I'm like, okay, if I were to have done this, like I started looking at it, was like I never really wanted to hurt people, so I wasn't gonna go and like start mugging people and all these other things. I was like, if I was
Did you
gonna do it,
think about that? Did you
I
think
did.
like, oh, maybe I'll go do some robberies, but I'm
Yeah.
really not violent. I don't want to hurt someone. Like, was
It
that
crossed
a
my
thought
mind. I had a thought process of it, and I was like,
Okay.
hey, and I was studying criminology at the time, so I was like, okay, if I were to do this, like, what's the likelihood of me like getting caught
Like in university?
in university? Yeah,
So how old were you?
I
Like
went to
early
university
20s?
17,
Wow.
straight from high school.
Okay, so you're 17 years old, you're in university, you're studying criminology.
Yeah.
What precipitates you thinking maybe now's the time to start robbing people? Like, did something change in your life? Was there a financial situation or an opportunity that presented itself in a different way?
I think I was just becoming more brazen with who I was. I think when I was growing up through that 12 to 15, I was kind of timid. I use humor as my way to like connect with people.
Okay.
But then when I started getting older, honestly, I bulked up in height too. Like I bulked up to like 5'10" and stuff like that. I was like 5'6" or something like that. And then I put on weight, so I got up to like 180. I was used to be like 120. So I just started going to the gym and stuff like that. And also, I think I started growing a community around me. So I had like quote unquote manpower around me.
Okay.
And then
With people that were involved in criminal activity?
yes,
Like if you were growing up in Rosedale,
Yeah.
right? If you were 17 years old, even with an alcoholic or drug addicted parent,
Yeah.
because certainly addiction does not, differentiate between poverty line.
hmm
So if you were in Rosedale
hmm
and going to a high school in that community where drugs are not prevalent, gang violence is not prevalent, criminal activity is not prevalent because most individuals everyone who's growing up in Rosedale is obviously in a more affluent community.
hmm
17-year-olds who are starting in university are not thinking, maybe I should go rob someone.
yeah,
Unless there's something
Mhm.
going on either in your life or in your social circle or in your world that would entice you
Yeah.
to start down that path, especially at that age. What is it? What's going on in your world that at 17 years old, university student, doing well, you think, maybe I'll rob somebody because
Yeah.
I'm big enough now.
yeah. I just realized the traditional path wasn't working for me.
Why not?
I wasn't. I was taking a bus to school. I had friends that were like driving Mercedes and stuff like that, and I was looking at my life and I'm be like, with everything I have, is that it for me? Like, is this like working a 9 to 5, not really enjoying life at a young age? I was like, I mean, if I'm young, I might as well make the mistake now.
Wow.
Versus like making the mistake when I'm like 27. It's a little different. It's kind of like people are like, come on, you should have done that when you're younger at least. So I was just like, okay, yeah, why not? And at that time, I was just like, I tried to reason with myself about it. And I tried to be like, okay, if it was going to be financial, I had all these ways of doing it, but I just never could like actually like quote unquote flip the switch. And there was a moment where I think working at Hudson's Bay at the time, during all this like fiasco, I think it was like maybe my 3rd or 4th year of university, someone accused me of like kind of stealing their wallet, and I never did it. And I think that was the tipping point with me. I was just like, I'm not gonna have someone accuse me of something and have them disrespect me like that, and knowing that I could be doing a lot better for myself. I don't need to steal your wallet. I could steal other things. So I think that was like, it never made sense to me. When I look back, I was like, why did I even do that? Like in the first place. But I think it gave me the foundations of hard work. I've worked so hard from being in that system to coming out, and whatever I made, I tripled that probably outside of it, doing like partnerships, collaborations, like working a well-paying job and stuff like that. But I had to have gone through that to realize like there's more to my life.
Okay. So you just skipped to the end of the story,
Yeah.
which we're going to get to because I
Yeah.
do think it's phenomenal.
Mhm.
But I think for people listening to this, you think about an average 17-year-old, you've made it through high school, you made it through public school and high school without
Yeah.
committing any criminal offenses.
Mhm.
You're in university, you think about robbing someone.
Yeah.
You mentioned like you have friends that are driving Mercedes.
Yeah.
So are those friends who are involved in criminality, or those friends who are, born into wealthy families? Like,
Mhm.
how are they paying for their Mercedes?
It was probably through criminal activities. And
Okay.
I think I was seeing that, and I was like, I'm not gonna lie, I was a bit jealous of it. I was just like,
No,
wow,
that's
what the hell's
fair.
wrong? Yeah.
Listen, that's fair. It's interesting for people to talk about what that motivating factor is, because a lot of people that I encounter who aren't a part of the justice system and don't have, any connection whatsoever to people in the criminal justice system think that like those in it are just bad people.
Yeah.
And that's not the case
Not at
at all. It's really circumstantial for, I think, the vast majority of individuals who get charged.
Yeah.
So you're in university, you have never committed a crime, but you're seeing your friends who are involved in criminality doing financially better than you are.
Yeah.
And okay, and you said you're also working like part-time jobs as well as being a full-time university student. So you're struggling.
Yeah.
You're working like really hard. I remember those years. I had 2 part-time jobs and was a full-time university student throughout all of undergrad. And I remember always being involved in some sort of hustle on the side in order to make sure that I had things that I felt like I needed.
Yeah.
So you're seeing that, you're working at Hudson's Bay, and you get accused of stealing someone's wallet, which you didn't do.
Yeah.
Up until that point, had you done anything, of a criminal nature?
I was doing like mild fraud here and there.
You were?
Yeah.
How did you get into that? Was the first time? And again, you don't have to tell me like the details, but I want to understand like your mindset that goes from being this amazing student at school, doing everything you can at home to help support your mom, your little brothers, coping with, a parent who's involved in substance abuse heavily, but otherwise living like a pro-social lifestyle. What changes for you that you do that first fraud?
Honestly, it was the risk of it. I think once you start trying and you're like, okay, it's a 50-50, probably less than that even. It's like, if this works, it's perfect. Once it first works out, then you're just like, wow, like I could do this now.
How much money did you make from the first flip?
It was like a couple hundred, like maybe $400 or $500 extra.
$400 or $500
on top of whatever I was making. Yeah.
And that for you felt worth it.
Yeah, and then it started getting bigger amounts after that.
Okay, so it starts off $400 or $500, and this is at one of your workplaces at the time.
Yeah, at workplaces at the time, and then also at the time it was like, I think Metro passes were like a big thing back then, right? So you'd have like duplicates of those. So I was selling probably like 30 plus units of those just to people I knew and stuff. I was growing as like a salesman in a sense. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, and so you have like sort of these small illegal businesses on the side, but doing everything small.
Absolutely.
And then you get accused of stealing someone's wallet, and you didn't steal anyone's wallet.
Yeah.
And we spoke a little bit before the show. The person who accused you of stealing their wallet at Hudson's Bay didn't even have their wallet with them at Hudson's Bay. Like they had left it at a different store before they even got there.
Correct.
But you were put into an interrogation room, and you were held there for how long? Hours?
Like maybe 2 hours.
And during that time, like, what's going through your head? Like, you are now falsely accused when you could be accused of doing the things you're really doing, but they're accusing you of doing something you didn't do.
It had this catch me if you can moment where I was just like, this is not even what I was accused for. And here you are trying to get me knowing that I haven't done anything. So from there, I think on top of like the dips in like my mental health with like losing like an uncle that was like a father figure to me. And I think just everything in that moment was just like, you know what, like here I am doing it in limits. I'm gonna take the restrictions off now. And after this encounter, that like I felt so shamed by it. Like, and I actually cried during that thing because I'm like, you guys never believed that what I told you was the truth.
Right.
And I think that tilted me to be like, all right, if I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna go all in now. So it's not gonna be a couple hundred now. It's gonna be a couple thousand. And I started living that life for probably 3 months. But in that 3 months, I thought money was going to make me happy. It didn't make me happy at all. Then if people said, oh, yeah, money doesn't make you, then you haven't made enough to know that it doesn't make you happy. You got to always want more. You got to always want the next thing. And there's always going to be something newer the next year. The clothes and everything that I bought, they don't even fit me now. That's how much like I looked at it. I was just like, wow, like all this status or whatever I thought money was going to give me this happiness. It didn't help nothing. It was making me worse. I couldn't even look in the mirror after a while because I was just like, I'm not even the person that I thought I was.
Wow.
And that really like tilted me.
And so that was after just a few months.
A few months.
What stops you? If you go really hard for 3-4 months, and then what causes a shift?
Once I got caught, And then looking back at it, and like I had this thing where like, if I were to get caught, how would it look like? And it felt like a movie kind of situation. Like it felt like they had this whole like sting operation. Like it was so crazy. Like I felt like they were watching me through the cameras, and they knew the time that I was using the washroom, and they had like someone like intercept me like while I came out. So I already knew someone was watching, because I'm like, this is like the oddest thing in the world. They closed up a bathroom upstairs, and they made me come downstairs where like the holding thing is, and it was just one of those weird encounters, like, okay, this is it now. But at the time I had something planned for that day. So I had someone coming in that day, and I was like, oh my God, like I got caught. So at the time they put me in the holding cell. They didn't even read me my rights. They're like, hey, just sit there. The cop comes in. He just like, hey, you're under arrest and stuff like that, and just leaves. So now I'm being interrogated by like other people. And I realized how much I was in a hole. And I was just like, wow, so this is how it ends. But at the same time, I had a friend that was supposed to come, and I was like, I don't want him to get charged with this, because I could beat this myself. I know that I could endure this, but having someone else in it, that's another perspective, another witness in this.
Right.
So they showed me photos, and I was, oh shit, like these are 4K photos at the time. I was like, holy shit. I was like, who's this guy? I don't know the guy. The guy's asked me where the bus is or something. Like, so they went through that whole spiel with me, and they realized they weren't getting anything. And they eventually they gave me this like promise to appear paper, and they're like, okay, just go get fingerprinted and stuff like that. I was like, oh my God, like.
And what were you charged with? Fraud?
Yeah, there was like 8 counts of fraud, proceeds of crime, all this and that, like probably like 8 charges in total.
Okay.
Yeah.
And at that point, like what was the total value of the frauds that they had caught you for doing?
It definitely wasn't for everything. That's why I was kind of like, oh shit, like they didn't get everything.
Right.
So at the time it was.
And did that motivate you to keep doing it or to do it better? Or did that motivate you to say, I'm done with this, I don't want to be arrested again?
I'd be lying if I said I fully stopped.
No,
I think it was just more like a wake up call to be like how everything was going to transpire if I kept doing this. Like at the time I was in my last year of university.
Okay.
And I was walking, like, I was very stubborn as a person. I realized that I never wanted to do another year or whatever. So I endured. I had to write 20-page papers while paying my lawyers. I would be in class, and my lawyer called me and was like, I need another $1,000. I said, oh my God, like, here I am already paying a $30,000 tuition. I'm already adding more to it.
Right.
And there was a point where like everything was said and done, and I paid off the lawyer fees. I paid off my education with all the money that I've accumulated from this. And I was left with like $60.
Wow.
Yeah. To rebuild my life after was $60.
Okay. Did you feel like it was worth it? I mean, you paid off your university.
Yeah.
So, not that I'm here promoting fraud, but like I have clients who are selling drugs, and for them, it's worth it. Mm-hmm. Even when they get arrested, even when they have to pay me, $1,000 to deal with their cases. For them, financially, the numbers still make sense. Mm-hmm. And then I have clients who get caught once. Police come, they seize their entire shoebox that's sitting under their bed. Yeah. And they're like, I don't understand what I just worked the last 3, 4, 5, whatever many years are, if the cops can just come and take everything.
Correct.
That's the name of the game, right? Like we'll see what happens at the end of the case. If we can beat it, maybe we get some back for you. But that's part of the risk. Mm-hmm. So for some people, it's like life-changing when they get arrested, to the point that they don't ever want to be involved in criminal activity again. And other people, it's a learning experience of how to commit crimes better. What was it for you?
It was a little bit of like how the system worked.
Okay.
I studied it, but when you're in it, it's a different ball game.
Right.
And I don't know, maybe I was like a college student at the time where I wanted a hands-on training of it.
So you went and got yourself arrested?
Yeah, I got myself arrested. I went through this process.
You probably could have just contacted a lawyer and said, can I shadow you? And
yeah, I called you. Okay. I called you that day, and I realized that after.
A little bit later than the fact.
Yeah.
But earlier on.
Yeah. And then I feel like that wouldn't have satisfied me. I feel like at the time I wanted more of a, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And I was upset with all these other things that are happening in my life. And for me to say that, education was my way out and I was able to pay for it and get all these things. There's a dark side of it too, where like I could have just been arrogant of the fact and continued to doing it to
Absolutely.
like to get even bigger charges on that. And I realized that I just stopped. I said, you know what? It's not my game anymore. I think that I came out on top, I guess, in this situation. But that's my thing when I talk with younger youth about it. And I was like, okay, if you're going to do that, like, what's your plan? Like, oh, I'm going to do this and that. I was like, okay, like, that's it. And they look at me and they look at me like I'm seeing inside of their brain right now, because it's never ever done. You start off and be like, oh yes, I didn't. And I met some people that tried it and they got caught for like the second day.
Right.
And it's the second day. How much could you have made in the second day?
I mean, that's a lot of people earn and spend and earn and spend. And by
Yeah.
the time they get caught, they have nothing to show
Mhm.
for it. Okay. So you stop after your first arrest. Like
Yeah.
you get arrested the first time, and that for you
Was
sort of
enough.
shifts the whole mentality.
Yeah.
You're in your 4th year of university,
Mm-hmm.
graduating with a degree in criminology.
Yep.
What was your plan for after school? Like, regardless of whether or not you had been arrested for these frauds,
Mm-hmm.
what were you going to do with criminology?
I wanted to write the LSAT at the time.
Right.
So I wanted to be a criminal lawyer. And then I was talking with my lawyer and everything while I was going through this. And he was just like, we had a heart to heart. He's like, you know what? You need to make better choices in your life. Your marks are good. Like,
Right.
they're actually good. Even the judge was like, you have this skill set to like change your life. Like, you got to put your energy in something better. And I took those words seriously. I think that when I was all said and done, I was looking at it. I was going through this as selfishly, to be honest with you. I wanted to just be in a different position where I was, and I wanted to rush it. And that was my mistake. I was trying to rush it. I didn't trust the process anymore. And I started believing in something else. But looking back at it, I had to work like overnights. I had to work a regular job. I think I had to work maybe like 30, 40 hours a week on top of school just to make sure everything evened out with my lawyer fees. When I was like 21, 22, but I still had a record for the year. So in that whole year, that was I guess the lowest I ever been, actually, outside of the fraud's life and everything. No one comes up and checks on you. No one says like, hey, thanks for helping me when I was, down. Like, no, they turned their back on you a little bit.
Like all your friends?
Yeah.
Like nobody was there.
No one really helped me in this financial situation. I think I was always there for people, but in the position that I was in, I always try to help people, but no one's going to be like you. And I learned that tough
The
lesson.
hard way.
I learned that the hard way.
I see that time and time again. The
Yeah.
amount of people that I represent that have been arrested and say, oh, call this person and they've got my money and they're going to take care of bail and they're going to take care of this. And
Call and they
it's
don't
not
answer.
there. You call and it's like, oh, yeah, miss, I'll get back to you. Yeah, I'll get back
Yeah.
to you, miss. And, left telling the client, like, no one's coming through for you. And they're sad lessons. They're hard
Yeah.
lessons. Obviously, it's not everyone. There's, different circumstances for everyone. But for you, it was a hard lesson to learn that, the people you had given to weren't giving back.
Yeah. And I took that and was able to build something from the ground up. So maybe fraud was the foundation. I don't know if that's a good foundation, but I realized the work and dedication I took to overcome that
Right.
was the foundation. Whether I even had enough to pay for university or something, I still would have got it paid. I think going through that, I was able to recognize systems. And I was like, okay, if I could recognize and go into a system, a $1 billion company system and get into it and completely overhaul it, that means that I could do that with creating relationships, like connecting outside of it, networking, starting businesses, and connecting with youth. It was one of my foresights with like community work. So when I was charged with all this, I couldn't even get a job. So it was making it even hard to even survive.
Talk about that, because the number of people that I meet, again, like that are out of the system.
Yeah.
At dinner parties, just with people, and it's all like, oh, I don't understand why these kids just can't get a job. Why can't they get a job?
You can't get a job because no one wants to give someone with a criminal record a job. And it's like, take this from someone that actually did well in school. Like, I was an 80+ student. I knew what I was doing. I knew how to talk to people. It doesn't matter. For even certain jobs, like they're going to vulnerable sector check you. So you can't get any job working with vulnerable people. So youth jobs you can't even get. You can't even be around senior citizens and stuff like that. Imagine if you have a travel restriction, you can't even travel or stuff like that. So you can't get a job even if you wanted to, because there's also the bias out there. So when I work with other youth that have criminal records,
Yes.
I tell them you have to be aware of how you're telling your story, because people aren't going to be as merciful as you think they are. So I say, if you're going to tell your story, don't really and truly say what you did. Just say you have a record and you're trying to overcome it. Be as loose as it, because there is an awe to it a little bit. Like, how'd you overcome this? Like, now you get to talk to other youth that are in that situation to kind of motivate them or even give them a way to. And I say community work does help people. I think that community work is the most forgiving environment for the most part. Can you make a career from doing talks? And you have to be able to learn how to talk and tell your story.
Yes.
So that's where I was able to work and found some like grassroots with other youth to kind of give them a mindset to be like storytelling and journey mapping is an important asset of your journey. If you're going to go through something, you at least should monetize your story at least. Go out there, tell your story, like go talk to youth groups about your experience in the justice system. So when you're able to overcome your record, at least you have a foundation to be like, now I've had 2-3 years of experience. And people forget that, like, if you can't get a job with a criminal record, how much experience can you possibly gain in that time frame?
Right.
So even if you were to beat that after the fact, you're probably in your mid to late 20s, or going to your early 30s, and you're starting life all over again.
So how did you do it? So it's one component to educate people who don't know anything about the struggle of being in the system or being saddled with a criminal record. On the flip side of that, I have so many clients who have criminal records that are trying to leave the system, that they're done. They really would like to do something better, but feel like they can't. What's your advice to them?
The biggest thing that I did for myself was try to find my community.
Okay. And how did you find your community?
I grew up in Jane and Finch. So at the time, I think during the COVID pandemic, ironically, there was a boom in community work positions. And at the time I had a record. So I was applying to everything, getting denied. It was actually miraculously, someone took a chance on me, and it was a government job actually. It was a couple. I actually worked at a law firm. So, and I think that was a talk of the town because I disclosed to them I had a criminal record. So my LinkedIn was getting a lot of views from lawyers and stuff like that. They're like, how did this guy even get here? But at the time I was doing that probably at like 22. I was never afraid to keep trying. And that's what the record taught me, was that if someone's going to close the door on you, you have nothing to lose when you keep knocking on doors.
That's great.
So I kept knocking. Some would creep open a little bit, close it. So I was like, okay, I know how to open it a little bit wider now. Keep knocking. I would do things for like $5,000 for a small job for a couple months. I was overloading my work capacity because I worked so hard when I was having the record and other things. So I had the tolerance to work these other random jobs. And I was never prideful to say I couldn't work this. Like, I would work it if it would allow me to work it.
Like what?
I would work like overnights. I'd work like delivery jobs. I'd work like community work jobs from like 9 to 5 and then do something else from that time. And in the hopes that I could find a path for myself. And ironically, I work for this company called, it doesn't even sound like it's real. It's called the Department of Imaginary Affairs. So DEI for short. And they
imaginary affairs.
I swear to you, I swear to you, if I already had an issue going to banks already, I was cashing in these checks from this company, and they're like, all right. So they gave me the start in my community work journey, and it was.
And what did they do?
It was a small grassroots organization. We did parks. I'm not a Parks and Rec guy, as you could tell. I don't go out to parks,
Right.
But they were paying at the time, and I would go out to do workshops in the Driftwood community, and that was a community I was very familiar in.
Oh, that's amazing.
And so I started connecting with younger youth, talking to them about the park programs that we had. I was leading, and I was actually enjoying the work that I was doing. They say community work is actually good for the soul. So I was feeling replenished after like going through all that like trials and stuff like that, that now people wanted to just talk to me just to talk to me. And from there, I got noticed from a bigger agency. And that was the first career path I got into, a $30K job. And then from there, I started making a name for myself. I started throwing like bigger community events, solo, by the way.
Like just on your own initiative.
Yeah.
Without having like an organization or any funding behind it.
I worked for a major organization, but it was just like what you did with the opportunity at hand. Because you could just work the job at 9 to 5 and then go home, and then it doesn't need to take off. I was the other way. So I never came in when the place was renovated. It was always from the ground up. I would build something to leave the place in a better position. So that's what I would do. I run bigger programs. I would make sure that the youth that were coming in were getting some satisfaction. I wasn't running a program just to run it. I actually wanted them to benefit and grow from it. And I think that's where my relationship building skills started taking off. And I started getting noticed on a higher level, and I was able to get promotion and the next promotion like every year.
Where does that mentality come from for you? Where does that hustle? Because so many people, especially, I don't want to age myself, but in your generation, they do the bare minimum.
Yeah.
They do what they need to do to get that paycheck, to get by, and they're not thinking big picture. For you to say, especially, what you shared with us about your upbringing, for you to say, I want to leave this organization, which isn't yours, not your organization. You're not building the business for yourself. You're doing it for someone else, government, community. you want to leave it better than how you found it.
Yeah.
Like, that's huge.
Mm-hmm.
Where does that thinking come from?
I think it just started when I was younger. Like when I started helping people, I genuinely wanted to help them. It wasn't like, oh, it's alter, oh, I help you with my test and you give me weed on the side or something like that. It was never like that. For me, I generally liked it when someone had a problem and I was able to solve it. And that's what I was doing from, if you track it from when we first started, my mother had a problem, my father had a problem, my community had a problem. And I was trying to find means of trying to like make sense of it in my own reality of it.
Wow.
My mental health wasn't good, and all the things that I planned, they never went accordingly. Even though it doesn't matter how much I overthought it and went into it, the things that I couldn't control or the things I never had planned were the ones that really took me off to another like trajectory. So that's where mental health, like I started doing workshops in mental health for the youth, and I realized that I was a public speaker. I didn't even know that I could talk to people, and people were inspired. Like people remembered me and they wanted to come talk to me again after, because I was sharing like tidbits of my life and it was resonating with them. I never cared about whatever title I had. Like even if I was a supervisor, I didn't care. Like I still talk to people like as real people. And I think that was the biggest thing that I was learning. And I was actually very inspired by your story. I think when I first started, I have your business card. I was going to show you that. I still kept it.
Oh, wow.
And it was so like, it was the greatest business card I ever saw. It was like a glossy, like who judges the judge. And when you're telling the story, I was just like, if I was going to be a lawyer, I was going to be like Jordana, because that was the type of lawyer I wanted to be. I wanted to be a criminal defense lawyer. I wanted to share my story to a bunch of crowds. I actually took digital media very seriously. And I knew that the modes and the growth mindset I was establishing was going to take me there. Do I want it to happen tomorrow? Absolutely. But I know that that's not, I'm going to be falling into the same pattern that I did when I was younger.
Yes.
I rushed it.
Yes.
I wanted it. I instead of waiting for the seed to grow, I just planted a tree there and I said, I don't care where I took this tree from. I just have a tree now. But guess what? I don't know how to sustain that tree now because I don't know how the process of it. So it started literally when I was younger. I had this growth mindset. I was never content with anything. It doesn't matter if I'm in psychotherapy schooling and I'm going to be done when I'm like 29. I want to go to law school because that's what I told myself when I was younger. And psychotherapy, like the ED of the school that I'm in right now.
Right.
I told her, I'm like, I don't even want to be a psychotherapist. She's like, what do you want to be then? I want to be a lawyer. She's like, you could do both. And I said, oh, like no one ever told me that. I thought you had to choose one, like career path.
Right.
And she's like, hey, you know what? We want you here. If you would like to be here, we will give you a scholarship. And that happened 3 years ago. I'm in my third year, about to go my fourth year.
It's amazing. And you're doing a 5-year program.
It's a 5-year
that's
program.
A huge commitment.
Yeah.
And you don't want to actually pursue the career that's going to be, sort of, that's going to come from the schooling that you're doing right now?
I do want to.
Why are you doing it then?
Yeah, I like the things that I'm learning from it. I don't think I'm torn off from like not being a psychotherapist. I probably want to do that for a couple of years and see how it is for me as building a practice up. Maybe it'll give me insight for when I want to be a lawyer. But I realized I was growing as a person every year from that program because the first 2 years are about yourself. And then now in the third year, I'm kind of learning about clients. But I've been always working with clients since I was younger. I know how to set up a business transaction. I know how to do all these things. But it's more hard for me to talk about my emotions than it's for me to read a law book. I could read a law book. I could write a test. I could do moot or whatever. And
I think that's most people.
Yeah.
I'm no different.
Yeah.
I'm a much easier time rationalizing everything. I've also been always a problem solver. Emotions have always been the most difficult of like categories of topics to embrace. I don't think that's a bad thing as long as you don't completely neglect that exists, right? I think that when you ignore the emotional component, especially you touched on a lot, addiction, violence, trauma, grief of losing your uncle, like all of these huge, difficult milestones in life can also propel you towards having such greatness once you actually overcome them or master them in some way. So I think that that's an important component. It doesn't need to be like the front runner unless you want it to be.
Absolutely.
And so, okay, you were working for these other agencies, which is amazing, doing incredible events. With what goal in mind? So I meet people who work with youth that they want to try to steer the youth in a better direction. They want to let them know that there's better options. They want to prevent youth from entering, the criminal justice system to begin with. They want to educate them about what it is. Like, what is it for you that attracts you to that type of work? Because, I mean, the reality is you can do anything, right? You're smart, you're accomplished, you've got this mindset. Why is that the field that you direct yourself to?
With the work that I do, I see a lot of like myself with a lot of the youths I'm growing with. For someone I wanted to be the change that I wanted to see. And working with the youth, I could see when someone believes in them, how much they would push themselves further.
Wow.
So when I was younger, I had someone believe in me at the time that when I was scared to tell her about my criminal record. And ironically, she found out and she reached out to me. And that was the first conversation someone told me, like, you know what, I'm going to be in your corner regardless of right or wrong, And she was like a big sister to me when I went to university. So she was actually the first person I met, and she mentored me throughout the years. And I felt so ashamed to talk to her about my like shortcomings with the record. I was like, here I am I'm engaged in criminal behavior, but I'm coming and supporting your events and stuff like that. So when she figured that out and she talked to me as a person, and I felt better about myself. I felt like everything was understood. She had the capacity to hear and see me, and that really changed the trajectory because I didn't want to disappoint her, and I did it for myself too because I don't want to just be a hypocrite about it and be like, oh, do this, do that, but I'm on the side doing X, Y, and Z. So I felt an obligation to like do better for myself, and then in a sense I could grow with someone too.
It's amazing to think that it was just one person telling you that you could.
Yeah.
And how many people I can think of that don't have anyone in their life telling them that they can do different or be better or put themselves into a different situation. And they continue doing the same thing over and over again and over and over and over again without any better results because they don't have anyone telling them, hey, there's another path, there's a different way. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Today, you also have a number of organizations, some of which you started yourself.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Yeah, absolutely. Finding your heart was something I was able to co-found with a bunch of youth in Jane and Finch.
Yes.
This is where I'm able to kind of test my business mindset a little bit. I feel like when you're in community work, it's a little cut and dry. Like, here's the work, you do it. I was never like that because I wanted to expand on it. So whether it was getting corporate partnerships, which is hard to do in community work, I've seen someone say, corporate businesses need to think like community organizations, and community organizations need to think like corporate entities.
So interesting.
Because it's that shift, right? Like when you're doing the community work, it's a business model in itself. Right. You're giving back, but you're using grants and other things to make that business make sense. But with corporate, it's like they have the money, but they don't necessarily know where to pour that money into, right? So I was trying to find mediums where like I was able to support different communities at the same time. Even though I'm working in Jane and Finch, I support Jane and Finch holistically. Jane and Finch is not where I want to end my career off. I know that life is bigger outside the community, the relationships, and we don't have the infrastructure in Jane and Finch. So I had to go like downtown. I got flown out to Ottawa, and I had to speak with other businesses over there. And I was able to bring resources back to Toronto. We were able to give out, Nike Air Force shoes to about 23 youth, and we have another 24 that we're giving out next month.
That's amazing. What's the organization called?
Finding Your Heart.
And what's the basis for someone to receive a pair of Nikes through your program?
You attend our workshop series. It's a 3-part workshop series. I co-developed this with Jamal Berger. So he was the founder and executive director of Kickback. So he was another individual that inspired me and mentored me. So I was running him through the ideas of like how this curriculum would look. And I always shoot for the stars. I think I was waiting for him to kind of tell me like, this is a bit much, right? he didn't tell me that. He's just like, you could do this. And this happened when I was like 25, 26. And I was actually amazed because I was here pitching this idea with the hopes of like, he's going to tell me like, yeah, why don't you try something cheaper? Like, and I was never a person that didn't know how to get to the money. I think there was a difference when I was chasing the money when I was younger, but now I'm making money. Like I'm making better business decisions where it's profitable and it's leading to a lot more sustainability. That was my thing, the sustainability. The fraud thing is not sustainable. You got to do it every day. You got to really and truly, like, the moral compass becomes tilted. And I talk with other people that are in that life, and they keep telling me like, I feel bad about this. Like, they talk to me about it because I have open conversation with them about the
Right.
life, and they're able to talk to me because it's not like I'm recording them when they're talking, but it's
And you've been there. You don't come from a place of judgment. You
no.
come from a place of, okay, tell me what's going on with you so I can help you
Yeah.
and try to guide you. And so what's the 3-part course that you're taking, or that you're teaching, sorry?
So the first part is mental health and creative adjustment. So
Okay.
before you even talk about anything, you got to acknowledge that there's a Band-Aid somewhere. Once you acknowledge that there's a Band-Aid somewhere, then you're able to at least talk about why it's there. Oh, this thing happened in my life. Something happened to me along the way that, made me who I am to this day. So I pair it with this term called creative adjustment. It was from Gestalt therapy. In a nutshell, it's just trying to understand why the person has creatively adjusted to their situation. So if you use crime as a medium to kind of like support your family, for example, does that mean that you got to continue doing crime to support your family? Or can you like acknowledge that you've done that to move past it? Creative adjustment is just the acknowledgement of something.
Interesting. And then the second part?
Second part is storytelling and journey mapping. So all these facets in my life, from mental health to now creatively telling my story and being on platforms where I'm able to share that story. That's what we designed for the youth. Tell me 3 things in your life that shaped you for who you are. And in your small group, talk with them. But now we want to add a component of active listening. So once you're telling your 3 parts of your life, I want you to listen to another person's 3 parts, and you tell their part and they tell your part. It's a difference between you saying it and you hearing it.
So great. And then the third part?
The third part is the fun part, and it brings in everything that we've talked about with mental health and storytelling.
Right.
It's the creative design workshop. So that's when we give the youth a pair of white Air Forces.
Okay.
It's a blank canvas representing their story. And we want them to design it however they want. I've had youth that just left it all white because they like it all white. I've had people design it based on the area they're from. I had youth design it based on the colorways. The one that I did was kind of like about the brand itself and kind of like who I was. So I had like change maker on it. I think I had my name on it. And that was one thing that I had to learn to appreciate was myself.
Wow. And so are they taught how to like paint on the shoes in order to create them? Like you actually pour that creativity into the shoes that then become like your own story and a work of art at the same time?
Absolutely. And we have an art facility to help them along the way.
Okay.
But for the most part, it's unguided. So we have stencils that they could like paint in with it. If they let us know the design that they want, we could definitely have that ready for them. But the biggest thing is to design it however they want. Like if it's minimal, if it's maximum. We had one youth in there. I've talked to this guy for about a year. I didn't even know he was an artist. He painted the most beautiful Air Force roses on it.
Wow.
It took me back because he never came out and said that he was an artist at all. He barely talks.
Right.
And that's what we want from the design workshop. You don't know how creative you are until someone gives you an opportunity to be creative. And then from there, we probably have them doing designs now for us and everything.
It's amazing.
So that was one way for me to actually involve myself in programming, but have a youth collective. So we were able to strategically work with different communities. And it's an incubator. That's how the organization kind of runs, is that we could make different workshops. But I'd rather build up someone that already is doing it in their community. So in a sense, giving them the spotlight, giving them an outlet where they're able to come on our podcast and talk about it. The way that I realized with community work and how to network was social capital. How can you make someone feel grounded in their community, but also believe in themselves? And you got to give them a vehicle to do that. They have the engine, but they just maybe aren't growing the audience as they want. But if you collaborate more, it's just strength in numbers. Especially in Toronto, it's like collaboration is something that we see, but we got to start implementing it. You can't just talk about collaboration and never collaborate with people.
It is a talking point. The number of community organizations that are doing such incredible work, but they do it just in this complete silo.
Yeah.
And then there's so much competition for funding and for grants. And I've just, I've been on enough panels now and been involved in so many different community groups that you see the infighting. And it's so unfortunate that there isn't more, like you call it, collaboration or just synchronization between all of these incredible programs. What is the guidelines for people who want, who let's say have like a young person in their life, whether it's a sibling, a child, and they want to join your program? What's the criteria? How do they get involved? How do they reach you to be a mentor? Because that's is huge right now. There's
Mhm.
so many youth right now that are struggling and they don't know how to connect to the resources they need that will help them. And then their parents who, want to provide them with that help don't know where to turn. How do they find you?
Absolutely. So if they're in the Jane and Finch area, I work at the Jane and Finch Center,
Okay.
and I work at Yorkgate Mall with our youth center up there. If it's outside of Jane and Finch, again, like as long as you could support your journey to Jane and Finch, I'm more than happy to help you. I'm a mentor outside of my work as well. So if they want to reach me, they could connect with me on Instagram, JNF_Deluxe. But the biggest part is that I never said no to someone that was seeking advice, because when I was younger, I would do the same thing. I would try to message people. I had a chat with you about that. And I kind of was inspired from like being able to connect with someone and learning from them as a kid. So right now, as a 27-year-old, just being able to reciprocate that, to me, it's fulfilling. Like I feel like I've that full circle kind of moment where I've asked for advice. Now I'm giving advice.
Would you ever take your program to different communities as well? Like
I've-
you've developed it in Jane and Finch. Would you also create a similar program, let's say in Regent Park? Would you pick one at Alexandria Park? Like there's so many communities right now that would benefit from the exact program that you're running. Is it a template that you could then, export either to other program managers who could set it up? Like
Absolutely. We've done it in Scarborough actually just recently.
Okay.
So we're in the Melbourne community now. I'm about to kind of be in either Rexdale or somewhere in like downtown as well. So we have that capacity to grow it. And I think that's where the next step is, to kind of expansion. So we've already expanded to Scarborough. We're waiting for that kind of to wrap up before we move on to somewhere else. But that's the hustle in me to be like, all right, I'm in Jane and Finch, but I've done a lot in Jane and Finch. My thing is to be able to go to different communities and showcase that like Jane and Finch people can move outside their community. A lot of the youth that I bring with me to different things, I have them job shadow me, because I wish I had someone be like, hey, come with me somewhere, like we'll learn something, right? Outside of our community.
Yes.
Because then when you see something's possible outside your environment, you're going to be like, I want to go out there. So I was doing a lot of mentorship with the Kickback Foundation. They're in downtown. I was the only one from Jane and Finch coming out there, and that was like an hour trek. But the advice that they gave me was something I could never have gotten in Jane and Finch.
What's that advice?
Shoot for the stars. Shoot for the stars. And it's not even as nuanced as that. It's really, are you giving yourself opportunities to grow? Are you going outside and not making an excuse about it? Oh, it's cold outside. I walked in like negative degrees weather for 4 years to go to high school. Wind was like a tornado when we were walking through the Palisades buildings. Like it was a lot. But at the time, I was willing to do it. And so if there was an opportunity, even in like New Brunswick, I would go to New Brunswick, like if it made sense to me.
Right. That's amazing. And so that's, I'm sure, the future of your organization is to aim bigger, move throughout different circles, because really this is something that is so needed. The opportunity for young people to connect with others who've made it out of the similar circumstances, who are able to address their trauma, look at their creativity, and find a way to build off of. I mean, it's incredible. So once again, if people want to connect to you, how do they find you?
I'm on Instagram at JNF_Deluxe, DELUX. And then also we have our youth collective page called Finding Your Heart_TO. And I'm always in Jane and Finch. I'm not a hard person to find in Jane and Finch.
Well, I'm thinking for a broader community, and I'm thinking bigger for you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for coming and sharing your story. I know this is really the first time that you've told it, straight through in detail. And I'm honored to be the person that has allowed that platform to happen. So thank you so much, Deluxe.
Thank you. And I hope to come back when I'm a lawyer. So I definitely want to have that conversation.
Let me know. Know. I'm always on the lookout for young talent.
Perfect. Thank you for that.
Another episode of Who Judges the Judge. Thank you so much.